In my new job, I started working as a functional analyst. But prior to that, I worked in production support management or a PSM team, if you know what that is. There, I was responsible for ensuring that our application is running smoothly in a production environment. So if there is any technical or a functional issue associated with our platform, then our team was responsible for fixing it either through some code changes or through some backend adjustments. But if we deduced any new requirement after interacting with the users, or we suddenly realized that a particular code logic which was implemented in older versions of code is no longer existing since more than few years, but it is still needed, then we used to create new use cases for our business analysts. Working on that role for almost 3 years gave me the exposure needed to understand what it really mean to work as a tester, developer, or even analyst. And fast forwarded to today, when I graduated with my master's in general management, I thought functional analyst could be a smooth transition from my technical profiles towards more of a business or a functional role. So what does it really mean to work as a functional analyst then? Any company can develop a software in-house on their own, or they could just license some other software as a service platforms. And the role of a functional analyst could be a little different in both these cases, just a little. In my current role, I'm working for introducing a platform called ServiceNow in our company, which is a cloud-based workflow automation platform. So it is used for automating certain business processes. Like if you are hiring a new employee, then that employee needs to have certain access for entering into the office, plus some hardware assets to work on. In such cases, instead of manually sending email to everyone involved, you could just automate that flow in ServiceNow. Just like ServiceNow, you can have other business applications like Salesforce, SAP, or Oracle APS, and many more. But when you buy licenses for all these SaaS systems, they are delivered to you as an empty package. Imagine when you are buying a new Windows PC, then it is delivered to you just with its basic OS. The rest, you have to configure on your own, like by creating an account and also setting up some UI parameters, etc., according to your personal needs. And that's the same with these softwares as well. Any company that buys a license for those softwares have to configure those softwares according to their particular needs. And that process involves few stages. For example, a typical project with such SaaS platforms involves or can involve 6 stages, starting with defining the objectives, then gathering the requirements, then designing system, building the platform, testing it, and then the last one, transitioning it towards their core business. Now, depending on your organization, you can have certain extra responsibilities as well. But generally, a functional analyst plays a role in more or less 3 of these phases, like gathering requirements, making a design, and then performing some tests. In requirement phase, you have to sit down with multiple stakeholders involved in the business process to understand how it is being done in the organization and if there is a scope for improvement. So basically, you try to understand the flow of business process in this particular phase. For example, most of us might have already tried some sort of customer support. Whenever you call them for reporting an issue, they create a ticket for referencing that issue in a platform usually known as service desk. You might also receive a text message or an email notification once the ticket is created. If so, then you will also receive a notification once the issue is fixed or somebody is working on that issue. Now, this particular process involves few steps, like creating a ticket, assigning it to a proper team, then someone from that team working on that issue, and then user being notified if the issue is fixed or not. Now, this steps represents a higher level description of what happens when you call someone for fixing the issue. And each of these steps have multiple action items or sub-steps beneath them. If done manually, then they can increase complexity for even a simpler issue, just because of the sheer number of issues that a company can have on a given particular time period. Hence, we use platforms like ServiceNow for automating these processes. But for automating these processes, you have to define all these sub-steps on a granular level as a requirement to developers, or in case of ServiceNow, the administrators, to work on them. sometimes you as a functional analyst can also have to configure them by yourself. Now, another important thing in all these steps is documentation. Your team worked on building a platform for a few years. Now they know each and every detail of that platform. But if suddenly, for some reason, if everyone decided to leave or if everyone got fired, which doesn't really happen in reality, by the way, then a new team has to join. But how would they know what sort of configurations you already performed? And that is why you should have documentations in the form of some architectural designs or some user stories, so that a new joiner doesn't have to check all these configurations manually by actually opening the platform. And if you're planning to start working as a functional analyst for ServiceNow, then you can find guidelines to write effective stories in Agile Development 2.0 in the following link, which will be mentioned in the description. And then comes the testing part, where a functional analyst needs to test if all those gathered requirements are converted into a process flow and if they are working as expected. As you can see, documentation is required everywhere. And because multiple stakeholders are involved, there needs to be a certain consistency in the documentation as well. In short, that's what we do as a functional analyst during the application development phase. But when the application development is completed and then it is fully transitioned into your business, then we are also responsible for supporting and maintaining the product. And if you can connect the dots, you'll realize it can be a step before becoming a product owner. But it depends, because you can go on different routes, such as becoming an architect, a consultant, or even a program manager. So if you have affinity towards softwares and you also want to learn more about business as such, then functional analyst could be one of the roles for you. Now, let's talk about certain FAQs. You can ask if the role is more technical or do we need to code being a functional analyst. Then it is not at all technical as of software developers. First, but I mean, you need to understand certain functionalities of the platform and sometimes also the business processes. In certain configuration, you might also need to use HTML, CSS for certain UI changes or SQL for backend management or database management. But generally, you don't need to code. For documentation, you might also need to know UML, which depends on the application or a platform that you are building. But in this case, if you are working in a technical company, even on a managerial role, then it involves some sort of technical aspects associated with it. It could be a low code, sometimes it could be no code, but still technical. Now at the moment, I can only think of one question, but if you have any more questions, then you know the drill. Comment. I'm trying to explore into new area in YouTube. I hope it works. If you like it and want me to answer more of these questions or make more videos like this, then do let me know. By which I mean subscribe, or how else I would know